celebrating Black History Month, so show some love to your family, friends, and neighbors and check up on them. On that note, this is how I welcome you to another educative episode of Ellen Keister-The Real Talk show with me, your ever so gorgeous, beautiful host, Ellen Keister. Last week, we spoke about the effect and rise of drugs as well as the recent HIV and AIDS report. In today's episode, we will be talking about mental health and its causes. To discuss with me, I will be joined by the Presidential Advisor on Mental Health with over 3 decades of professional experience in people-centered roles and 14 years in international experience in gender-focused education, mental health, and psychosocial support services. She is also an advocate, researcher, and a scholar practitioner. Who is she? Don't go anywhere because I'll be right back after this.
So let's watch The Real Talk with Ellen TV show by our very own daughter of Sierra Leone, Ellen Keister.
Welcome back to Ellen Keister-The Real Talk show. Of course, I just talked about who I have in the building with me. You want to know, I know you're guessing. You should know, Presidential Mental Health Advisor. She goes by the name Dr. Carol Labor. Hey, help me right now. Hi, Dr. Labor.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. Everybody knows Dr. Labor in Sierra Leone. It's not even about the work that she does. She's just so cool and so friendly. We'll always be chilling and having fun. She's so full of life. So everywhere she goes, hi, Dr. Labor. Hi, Carol. Carol, the popular girl. How are you? You good? How's everything?
It's going well. It's going well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm blessed. You know, we're just here. It is what it is. It's February, the month of love.
Yes,
you know,
it is.
what did you do for Valentine's?
Last year or this year?
This year. What did you do?
I was thinking about the last year before we even get to this year.
Okay.
Just relax,
Okay.
with loved ones, and just welcome love 365.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
So you're a mental health practitioner. How has it been for you?
Wow, so it's packed. You know, here in Sierra Leone, mental health is still on the rise. We're still beginning to just really crack the ceiling, if you would, when we're talking about mental health, even on a personal note, because all of us have mental health. When we hear mental health isn't a bad thing.
Right.
Mental health is actually the state of mind, and it also operates on a spectrum. And so when I say it's going, slow but sure.
Right, because one of the issues in Sierra Leone is, well, when they say mental health, you know,
Yes.
they don't really get it. They really just think, okay, that Chris man in Chris do what kind of streets name, you know, crazy. When you said everybody has some mental health problems in them. So what are some of the mental health problems? Just, you know.
So a lot of the mental health symptoms that I've come across in
Okay.
Sierra Leone is primarily depression, anxiety, psychosis, and then also drug-induced psychosis. When you talk about the effects of drugs,
Okay.
especially with Kush, tramadol, things of that nature, can cause depressive episodes in individuals. Yes.
Okay, cool.
And then you also have individuals that have non-communicable diseases.
Okay.
Communicable diseases, AIDS, HIV, and your last show talked about it.
Right.
And those diagnoses can bring on some sort of mental distress.
Okay. I know because in Sierra Leone, I know the mental health, you know, it's kind of like on the rise, the awareness.
Yes.
You know, nobody really knew what it was, you know, a lot is going on. But now I know this, and of course, they have you, advising the president on mental health, which is really good. Are you really a doctor, though? I want to know, because we have so many doctors. Are you really, let me know.
Yes, I am. I am a doctor of public health.
Okay.
I earned my degree from an accredited university in the States. So yes, I am a doctor.
All right, cool. They don't know this, of course, but I know this. You're actually SGBV survivor. We're not really going to dwell into that, but is that why you decided to go into the mental health field?
It really is. It really is. SGBV is a huge issue globally,
Okay.
especially for Black women.
Okay.
And when we talk about mental health with Black women, women of color, women of African descent, we have a very high rate of depression within our communities.
Okay.
And so a lot of the factors that go into SGBV it really impacts our environment, it impacts our way of life, and it impacts the way that we now see the world. Because what we don't really understand when it comes to mental health issues is how it impacts our brain, how it impacts our behaviors as well. So yes, that is the reason why I went into the mental health field.
All right, cool. Are you liking it?
Yes, I do. I do. Is it challenging? Yes, it's challenging, but it's challenging in a good way because it's forcing me to really step out of my shell. I know people be like, that ain't no get shell, but I do, especially when it comes to my professional work, because here in Sierra Leone, the stigma around mental health is still high.
Right.
And so oftentimes, what you said when you talk about mental health, they'll say, hey, that person did Chris, you no day. But really, before someone even gets to that point, there's signs and symptoms. There's different things that shows up. Even when we talk about our DNA. So you just
right, like when you say your DNA, like I'm thinking, huh?
Yeah, so mental health disease can run in families, just like we have traditions, our cultural beliefs. And it's the same way that mental health can show up in an individual, because you have two individuals that are coming together to create life, but you also have those individuals, their extended family. And so when a woman's given birth, just as we hand down heritages and cultures, we also pass down our DNA and our trauma traits. You know, Sierra Leone, we have a very rich history of trauma. Oftentimes when we talk about trauma, we start at the war, but trauma predated the war here. When you talk about the colonization, colonization of Africa as a whole, and then domestic violence. When we talk about SGBV, domestic violence, not till today begin. You don't tell when that party they beat them, I mean.
Oh yeah. Especially when it's like a normal, so when they say they don't beat you, they don't let you.
Can you imagine? And so when we talk about SGBV, we always tend to focus on the sexual side, but it's also domestic violence. It's emotional battery as well. So there's a lot of different layers to SGBV, a lot of different layers that cause trauma, and that also impacts our mental health.
Okay, cool. Earlier you mentioned about drugs, because that's another thing. Like I said, my last show we talked about it, and you also kind of mentioned it. So drugs is on the high, you know what I mean? I mean, do you know some of the reasons why, you know, the kids are really into drugs, and of course it's causing mental health because, like you said, psychosis, a lot of them is going on depression, so many things. You know, I'm bringing this up because, like I said, people just think when they say mental health, oh no, that kid's hard back on the streets. No. It could be me, it could be you, because depression, nobody really knows, nobody really talks, which will take me to something else I'm going to talk about. However, I mean, why are these kids on drugs? Like, why are they doing so much?
So in order to really get to the root cause of what's happening, we're actually working on what's called an investment case study, where we have professionals come in and do a case study to really do a situation analysis on what's happening within country. Right now, we know that drug use is on the rise. You see the videos that are going around. You see individuals in the streets that appear to be under the influence of drugs and or alcohol. Because when we talk about substance use, we don't talk about the alcohol side. It's always about the drug abuse, but alcohol as well can be a drug. People do get addicted to alcohol. Some of the common causes why individuals use drugs is stress as an unhealthy coping mechanism. And it's really just to get through the day sometimes. And I would really equate it when you see people using alcohol. People drink, you drink socially. People also use recreational drugs. But then it toes the line when it impacts your ability to live, laugh, and love, and impacts your livelihood as well. Because no one actually wakes up and say, I can't get addicted to kush. It's something that happens. And when I mentioned DNA earlier, some individuals are predisposed genetically to addiction, to the addiction gene. So you can have someone, your great-grandfather, your father, your great-great-grandfather that has an addictive gene, and now it's passed down to you. So you would see some people that say, me, I know they drink. Me, I know they smoke. Right. You know, people that I'm in family with, they drink and smoke, then they crazy. So me, I know they drink. And so that can be telltale signs also of being genetically predisposed.
So what are some of the long-term effects on the mental health instabilities?
So long-term effects are different from individuals to individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Mental health disorders, again, I mentioned that mental health operates on the spectrum, but mental health disorders is manageable. It's manageable, but it's about individuals learning and also recognizing their triggers. And triggers is really how you feel. When you feel your emotional stability is changing, when you feel that you're more sad than usual and it's continuous. We all have, again, mental health. We all don't have mental health disorders. But I would say in Sierra Leone, we all have trauma exposure. I will say that.
Right. Really, we've gone through a lot.
Yes.
Another thing that's really on the rise that people don't talk about, but it's happening in America among Sierra Leoneans. Before, we thought it was a white men thing, but now it's not even a black, it's an African American thing, it's an African thing, it's suicide.
Yes.
Basically. We've seen for the past couple of months our Sierra Leonean, that like I said, this is close to home. And of course in Sierra Leone as well, we just found out about a young boy who committed suicide. Yes. Of course last year was somebody else, a younger boy who also committed suicide because of he didn't pass. But this one that just happened recently at the blind school, nobody really knows what's going on. And I remember when I had Dr. Jella at one point, he said it's really on the rise, but they really just trying to put the numbers together. And people are really shying away from talking about it. Why do you think parents don't really want to talk about it?
Well, I think culturally in Sierra Leone, it's a taboo. If we hide things, you would find out that individuals are suffering from mental health disorders, depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, and things of that nature, and they don't talk about it. So the way that we have to address mental health disorders within our community is to talk about it. When you talk about suicide rates on the rise, currently it's not being quantified. So one of the things we're also working on is really getting the data correct. We have a DHIS2 system, and so last year about close to 15,000 individuals sought treatment for mental health disorders around the country in all 16 districts. And some districts have reported higher rates than others. What's the root cause? We'll hopefully get to that with the investment case study, which is really just a fancy word for research. And then also with suicide oftentimes, I can't say 100%, is reactionary. So something will happen that will drive that person to say, I gotta go kill myself. Again, it comes down to the individual, their environment. Are they living in an environment that's conducive for them to say to someone, hey, I feel depressed, hey, I feel suicidal. Now there's a difference between suicide, people thinking of suicide, and individuals that experience what's called suicidal ideation. And suicidal ideation is really individuals that think about, they glamorize what it would be like if they committed suicide, without they kind of burying, what they go wear upon them, but they don't actually have a plan to commit suicide. It's just that fantasy world of committing suicide.
You know what, I want you to hold on right there. This is really interesting. Don't go anywhere, I'll be right back after this commercial break. Welcome back to Ellen Keister-The Real Talk show. If you just walked in, I have Dr. Carol Labor in the building with me today. We're talking about mental health. Of course, if you don't know, she is the presidential advisor on mental health in Sierra Leone. Yes, she's from the States, but of course, she is a real doctor. Welcome back, Dr. Carol.
Thank you.
You know, I did joke, when I'm not even a joke, asking about the real doctors, because my last show, of course, it was an actual real doctor of medicine, and she said there's a lot of, they get a bakudu doctor, they're welcome.
Yes,
I know your practice is different, but it's a lot going on. People are just going around acting like I know these things, especially people from the diaspora. They blame us that not all of us are educated, and that the government just bringing these people to come to Sierra Leone to work. And you happen to be somebody that the government brought in to work on mental health. You know what I mean? So I'm just trying to make it clear. Yeah, she's qualified. Yeah. But before we went on the break, we were talking about suicide, which is on the rise among Sierra Leoneans in Sierra Leone and outside of Sierra Leone. And for example, in Maryland, like I said, for the last month, a couple of people
Yes.
have died where they committed children, young adults, and things like that. And you mentioned some of the different suicides. I want us to just go back to that. Like you were saying, there was one. How you call it, the
suicidal ideation. And that's where people just romanticize the idea of completing suicide. And so when you talk about individuals that have committed suicide, we know them.
Okay.
We know women in our communities that have committed suicide. And people say, oh, he died in sleep, so-and-so happened. We know women in our communities that have experienced sexual gender-based violence and then committed suicide as a result of it. We know women, and I'm saying women because I think the focus a lot of times is on drug addicts, people that are abusing individuals, which are mainly men. But women make up a high percentage of these issues. And so when we're talking about suicide and suicidal ideation, it's two completely different things because, as I mentioned, individuals that suffer from ideation don't have a plan.
Right.
Individuals that do have a plan rarely discuss it. If you hear someone say, me, I'd kill myself, please know that it's a cry for help. And how do we help these individuals? And it's really through conversation. When, I just want to back up a bit when you said, am I a doctor? It happens a lot. You have individuals out here that are literally playing with the lives of other individuals, playing with the minds of other individuals. You'll hear people say, oh, I had to do counseling, me not therapist, me not this, me not that. The first principle is do no harm. So how are you helping individuals if you haven't been trained to help individuals?
Right.
And now that doesn't mean everyone needs to go see a psychiatrist. The Kissy Mental Hospital, they're doing a lot of great work within Sierra Leone as a whole because they're the hospital that patients are referred to around the districts. But there's something that we can do at the community level, but it's not to pretend to be a practitioner.
Okay.
Yes.
Definitely, it's not to pretend, like you said.
It's not to pretend.
That's what's going on, and because even with mental health, I know in Sierra Leone we only have like 2 psychiatrists,
So
like in the whole country. Imagine that. So
Yeah.
everybody else is,
Yes.
therapists, and they're just there, whether it's money making or, like you said, it's do no harm. You know what I mean? I don't think it's something that we should really encourage. But I really wanted to make that clear because we're doing research and we're noticing a lot of that.
Yes.
And mental health is on the rise. So how can that be tackled?
Well, I think in tackling mental health is really one starting to have the uncomfortable conversations.
Okay.
You have Oprah asking people, are you okay? Are you really okay? But then also building the trust. Building the trust within individuals that you interact with, even on a daily basis. Building the trust, and so that individuals trust you enough to come and share with you. And when I say building trust, it's not just building rapport with individuals, but then are you a gossiper? Are you known to gossip? Because you go say, don't tell that they don't know. Your man will know. Or do you create a safe space for individuals to approach you? Yes.
Right.
And it's really about having these uncomfortable conversations
early.
Because oftentimes we wait until an individual cannot be managed at home, cannot be managed in the community, and then we rush and go to Kissy Hospital. And oftentimes once they get there, you're receiving treatment, but then people have that stigma, and sometimes individuals don't want to go there. They'll rather suffer. But so it's really about making an enabling environment for people to be comfortable. For people to be comfortable going to the Kissy Psych Hospital, to go into Dr. Jallo, to go into Dr. Mattia and say, I need help.
Yeah, that's the thing, because I have a friend who is actually going through depression, and I remember she said to me, if I didn't really believe in mental health, she said, I don't know what would have happened, because the minute I mentioned it to one of my friends or whatever, don't tell nobody, no, you know what I mean? They go laugh you, they go this. And I think that's what's really happening, they know people are going through that. No, tell me, they feel so you crazy, because they feel like, okay, when you crazy, then, it's a big deal, you know what I mean? So that's what it is, and I think we should really ask for help.
Normalize
Like we say every day now, like you said, Oprah's, are you okay? It's more like check on your strong friends. If you haven't heard from somebody in a while, I think you just reach out because you don't know what's happening. Right. At the same time, I speak to so many people. There was another girl who basically was going through depression as well. They turned it out to be a spiritual thing. Like she said, if it wasn't an aunt who saved her, it would have been like, oh, because you get devil and things like that. So basically what she's saying is, this uncomfortable, questions, like we need to talk about it, we need to ask, you need to help, instead of they go Congo side, look how that they make, look how, somebody else was saying, even on Facebook, because mental health is on the rise now, even the people that be smiling all the time, check on them. You know what I mean? Because a lot of times they hide it behind the smile. Because a girl that I heard that committed suicide, she was always smiling. She never once frowned her face. Nobody really knows what's going on. She never even mentioned, like you said earlier, about even saying it.
Right.
This person, in this case, apparently has never even said it to anyone to say, oh, I feel depressed, I want to kill myself. None of that.
Yes.
Like, how do they get to that point where, they don't even say anything and boom, you wake up in the morning, they've done it.
So there's individuals that can suffer from functional depression, functional anxiety, functional psychosis. Just because you have a mental health disorder does not mean that you're not able to function in society. People go to work. There's high rates of mental health disorders within the workplace. People go to school. And even with me, like I've suffered from depression since I was a kid, and people always say, hey, what's how you depressed? What do you got to be depressed about?
Really?
Yeah. And so, and for me, I've normalized talking about my own journey with depression, just so to give individuals just that space. They can say, if doctor they go through that day and you're able to talk, myself will able to talk. Because it's not something to hide about, it's something that's manageable. And when you say individuals that are laughing and smiling, but when you have your quiet time, when you're alone, maybe your stress level has increased, right? That's when you're having those episodes and really need to step back.
Okay. So what would you say are some of the challenges you face as a mental health practitioner?
So in facing challenges here in Sierra Leone, one, I'm very, what word do I want to use? I'm very intrigued, I would say. I'll use the word intrigued. Very intrigued about how mental health is going. Because mental health in our society, we're having these conversations. I was appointed by His Excellency as the first ever presidential advisor on mental health in Africa. So not just Sierra Leone. So we're really paving the way. We're currently working on the 2022 mental health draft bill. The previous legislation was 1902 Lunacy Act. So just imagine 200 years this act hasn't been updated. So it's really when I say I'm intrigued at how the space is being open to have these conversations on mental health. And then also with the number of people that are really looking at mental health across the spectrum. Our Honorable Minister likes to talk about life stages because mental health doesn't always have an onset in adulthood. So there can be acute cases where something may happen and it's triggered and you have an acute mental health breakdown. But mental health starts early. Children in the womb. If a mother is depressed, your baby is going to be depressed. There's a high likelihood of your baby being depressed. If a pregnant woman, pregnant girl has experienced trauma, that child now is a survivor of trauma because they have experienced it. And so when individuals are born and you see sometimes women are not able to breastfeed, stress can be a cause of that. See individuals when they give birth and they suffer from postpartum depression, there's things that we don't talk about. And so depression operates on the spectrum, psychosis, anxiety, it all operates on the spectrum. And if we have that early intervention, there's ways for individuals to manage so that we do reduce the burden on the Kissy Hospital.
All right, thank you so much. Don't go anywhere because I'll be right back after this commercial break.
Doro World Traveler, how is your Miami vacation going?
Fine, babe. I'll be back next week and I've bought you a lot of things.
Well, I hope the designer bag you promised is included though. No excuse this time.
That expensive bag? Babe, I am now in Malaysia.
UBA cards work from Moscow to Malaysia, from Malaysia to Miami. Bros, you can't escape this time.
Babe, are you there? I can't hear you again, oh. Your line is breaking. Hello? Wherever you travel in the world, don't go without your UBA card. UBA, Africa's global bank.
I am still here, of course. This is Ellen Keister-The Real Talk show. If you just walked in, I have Dr. Carol in the building with me. Today is mental health. Last week we talked about HIV/AIDS, drugs, and some of the things affecting Sierra Leoneans. Welcome back, Dr. Carol.
Thank you.
Okay. It's been really informative. Of course, we're talking about suicide, which is on the rise, and so many other things causing the mental health. Like I said, people think mental health is when you really just walk around the street mad. You know, they don't know you could be, you can be you and I. Like you said, you've been suffering with depression since you were younger and you're still going through it. And I'm happy that you were talking about it because, like you said earlier, if you as a doctor who's supposed to really help us out and actually saying, I'm going through this, then I'll be comfortable to talk about it because clearly we're not comfortable.
Right.
You know, we're cool, people that are free, no talk, you craze and everything else. We're just really trying to encourage people to really just speak out. Of course, suicide's on the rise. It's happening, in our communities. To say earlier, I think I don't say in a couple of my shows, is the easiest way for a high down, it die nicely. You know what I mean? Which, like Dr. Jallo at one point, he came on here was saying it. Like, it is what it is, but they just don't want to express it. They're just shy. We just hope we're really able to speak about it. And then that will really help. I didn't know that, as a presidential advisor on mental health, Sierra Leone is the first. That's really good. It means, like you said, we're paving the way for other African countries. Yeah. So you being a presidential advisor on mental health, what are some of the things you and, of course, other health workers are trying to put in place to kind of really just help?
Thanks for your question. So it pleased His Excellency, the President, Julius Matabio, to appoint the first advisor on mental health, and it's actually the first in Africa. Okay. And so what we're working on now is actually setting up a presidential task force on mental health. When the Kissy Hospital was refurbished by Partners in Health, His Excellency promised a task force. And so now we're coming through with the task force. And people always say, Ten Salon, they say not first, but we are the first, and we'll be the first to have a presidential task force. Okay. And under the task force, we'll be looking at mental health disorders. We'll also be looking at substance use, and then also alcohol, and then also behaviors, because a lot of things that's happening now, it's due to behaviors of individuals. Okay. And so how are we managing our behaviors, and how are we really taking a look at environmental factors that are contributing to our mental health as a whole? Also, we're going to have an anti-drug campaign. Okay. So we're going to have a kickoff on that, and really to educate individuals about the harmful practice of using drugs. And also anti-smoking is also in that because people do smoke recreationally. And people smoke like marijuana recreationally. People smoke cocaine. And we really need to educate individuals about the long-term effects of substance use.
So it's not even just about the drugs part of it, HIV/AIDS.
Yes.
That's another thing where it's really on the rise as well. Like, so the doctor we talked about it, and she feels like they're downplaying the numbers. What do you, right, more so because it's happening around the schools, but they're not really collecting data. Okay. So that also, because if they don't want to talk about it, or if they go to the doctor and they find out that they have it, of course, mental health, I think you did mention it earlier as well. So what do you think about the HIV/AIDS? Is it on the rise, or is it something where we're able to fix? Well, not fix, but manage. Manage, exactly.
So two things. So I'm not really privy to data on HIV/AIDS. Okay. And we all oftentimes associate HIV/AIDS with sex, promiscuity. But there's a lot of individuals that are intravenous needle users also. So that's a way to get the virus. Now, in terms of data, I know there is data, and it's pretty high. I know that for school-age children, they may not go to a doctor and get an HIV test. They may not go to, even at the college age, and to get an HIV test. Oftentimes, HIV will be detected when individuals start to show signs and symptoms. Yes.
Very cool. I know you also work with the COVID-19.
So the recovery.
The recovery. You know why I brought it up because I remember when COVID was really huge, when it really spread the word and stuff like that. There were lots of cases where people committed suicide in the States, not here in Sierra Leone. And that's when a lot of people realized, because, depressions was kicking in. Because, most of these people that haven't been home at all, they don't know their partners. Like, it was a lot.
Yes.
Right, it was a lot that was going on. But I know with COVID, people think it's done and over with. So the recovery.
So COVID is still around.
Okay.
I'm going to tell everyone COVID day out.
Okay.
And so as the ministry, what we're doing, we've really put in place the same pillars that the COVID response had.
Okay.
And so there was a mental health pillar, a psychosocial support pillar. And it's really important that we keep that pillar going, because you never know when disease outbreak will happen here in Sierra Leone.
Okay.
You never know when a mudslide would happen. We have annual floods. We have climate change. So you have different environmental factors that are impacting our mental health and well-being. So it's very important as a ministry and as a government as well to have these structures in place to assist people.
COVID is still there, so you're not done yet. So, you heard from the expert, COVID is still around. So, as an advisor to the president, working with the government, are you guys working on putting structures in place? Like, for example, if somebody's watching us right now and is looking for a center, you know what I mean, to go there and talk about things, do we have any of those, that is funded by the government? Not the private ones, because I know the private ones are there, which might be really expensive for that average Sierra Leonean. I'm trying to see if there is a center for the, Sierra Leone to go.
Yes, so I actually work at the Ministry of Health, not at State House, yes.
Okay.
So I was appointed by His Excellency, but I'm based at the Ministry of Health. And so at the Ministry of Health, you really see the hustle and bustle and the everyday work, the grind that people are putting into addressing substance use, mental health disorders. The Kissy Hospital, of course, that's well known. Everyone knows that you can go to Kissy Hospital. But the other district hospitals, the 16 districts, each hospital has a government hospital that individuals can get care from. They can show up, they have someone to talk to, and if they need to be referred to Kissy Hospital, then they'll follow the referral pathway. So yes. Now when you say the private ones, I have no idea about private centers, and we can definitely talk more, because I would like to talk more, learn more about that, because it's very important that we know who's doing what, and even if we're bringing them into the fold, into working with the Ministry of Health, that we know these places exist.
Okay. When I say private, because we do have some, well, I don't know if they're real, but we do have some therapists that do have their own private offices that actually sees patients. That's what I mean.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you don't know that?
No, I don't. But yeah.
How come you don't know them?
I look forward to learning. I really do.
There are quite a few, but of
Okay.
course, like I said, it's on the high side. Only, certain people can really afford the services.
Yes.
Because sometimes it's not really about, the average Sierra Leonean no one to speak up. It's more because they don't have anywhere to go.
Yes.
So I'm happy that, there are things being put in place. So they have that space, because if they cannot talk to their friends, they're afraid Kongosa, can't talk to their parents, they're afraid meeting them by my thing.
Yes.
Some don't mind really talking to a professional.
Right.
So we just want the access.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, I just really hope, you guys will really expand on these things and, and put all these things in place. So this job, you said you work at the Ministry of Health. So how did you get this job anyways? I'm curious. I want to know how you got this job.
So it's my journey. I always refer to my pathway in life as my journey, and I like to say the journey continues. And so I moved back here in Sierra Leone. Of course, I was born here. Spent a lot of years in the States. But I moved back here as soon as they opened the airport. I was on the first flight when they opened. When they opened the airport, I was on the first flight. So I came back and I wrote a letter.
Okay.
I wrote a letter to State House, and eventually someone contacted me. And a year and a half later, I was appointed by His Excellency, the President.
Oh, nice. So it's non-political. You know,
so it's like people are like, cause. They're just appoint him. But it's really advocacy. And between His Excellency and the Honorable Minister, they saw the need. Okay. They saw the need. Because again, Kissy Hospital is here, but we really want to reduce the burden. We want to make these discussions household, normalize it, being able to walk up to an individual and ask them, are you okay? Are you really okay?
Right.
And then getting to the bottom of it.
Okay.
Because a lot of times people say self-care, oh, I did go hang out to we party there, we did go pop bottles, we did go walk on a beach, we did go in a hotel. But after you do all of that and go home, whatever is causing you to experience mental health distress will still be there unless you unearth it, unless you get to the etiology, which is the root cause of what's happening with you.
All right, cool. Don't go anywhere. Don't move, because I'll be right back after this commercial break.
Hi, I am Leo, a super geek who's obsessed with artificial intelligence. I'm sure you're wondering how I got here.
Hi, Tony. It's been hard trying to find a quick way to send the cash across to you. The bank is quite far from where I stay.
Girl, I'm trying to call that pop-up shop I saw on IG. I need them shoes for a party this weekend.
Wait a minute, I can solve all these problems. All I have to do is get back to my geek zone and get cracking. That's how I created this great virtual solution. Chat with me on Facebook Messenger and experience a whole new world of banking solutions without going to the bank. Make transfers, buy airtime, get account statements, and more. After all, going to the bank is boring. Like, I can't drink this delicious coffee and fill a teller at the same time. Get it?
This is the end of the show. We're almost there, but I still have Dr. Carol, who's here with me, a mental health practitioner. If you missed my episode, of course, go to my YouTube channel or follow me on social media, Ellen Keister-The Real Talk show. Welcome back, Dr. Carol.
Thank you.
It's really nice having you here. I really don't want to go, but eventually at some point the show's going to be over.
Yeah.
So, back to, of course, all the things we've talked about. What are some of the campaigns you guys are working on as far as you represent the government right now?
So the anti-drug campaign.
Okay.
And it's really just really to, again, open up the dialogue, have these uncomfortable conversations, but then also working with different stakeholders to see who's doing what, really doing a proper situation analysis so that we can tell you, hey, in this district, these are the individuals that you can go to outside of the government facilities. In Freetown, this is where you can go, because it's really important to have doing a mapping exercise to know who's doing what, where, how, and when.
Okay. All right, because, of course, I go back to my last episode where we talked about drugs. Just in between the process, she was talking about all the chemicals that are in Kush, for example, because that's like the drug which is on the rise right now and just really killing our kids. Exactly. And then, boom, I saw this video or saw this news where the kids, apparently they were caught with some dead bodies or something. Oh, wow. And they said they're using that to grind the bones to put it in Kush. Oh, so no. So for me it was like, okay, 1 minute I'm hearing about all these chemicals, but then in Sierra Leone there are all these other ways of things that are put in the Kush to get high. You didn't hear about that?
No, and that's why it's very important for us to have this investment case study done, having the research so that we can get to the bottom of who's doing what, how's it being done, and how do we do preventive exercises within the country, yes.
Right, because now that's the thing, because for me it was like, what are these scientists? We tell it, say, bones from the body. I mean, maybe they use that as an excuse because the police catch them from what it's all over social media. I saw it. Maybe not that, but there was a story. Saying I need to go grind for hide, for ad.
It's so sad to hear.
So imagine with all the chemicals, that are, of course, here. And then with this one, imagine what's really going on. I just hope we're able to really just combat that, the drugs, of course, the anti-drugs campaign that you guys are going to be running. What exactly are you guys going to be doing? Going to the communities?
Going to the community, having stakeholder engagements.
Okay, that you mentioned earlier, okay.
These conversations at the school level, at the national level, yes.
All right. So now I'm speaking to you, Dr. Carol, personally as a personal, as you as a person. Thanks for really talking about your depression. What do you do to kind of combat it? Like, once you're going through it, what are some of your techniques? Because I'm trying to learn, because I be going through it too sometimes. But we try to just smile and act like all is well, all is not well. But we thrive, we push. But what do you do as you know?
So it's a lot of managing,
Okay.
emotional management, managing triggers, and really setting boundaries with people, places, and things. Knowing what impacts my mental health in a negative way, know what impacts my mental health in a positive way. Yeah, it's really about management. It's really about management.
All right, cool. So, do you offer services to people as you know, on a personal level? I'm just asking. I'm trying to see how we can help our people.
I was just asking me everything.
Everything. This is real talk. When you come here, I want to know everything. You're lucky we only have an hour. If we had 2 hours, you would have known a lot more. No, but you really offering services to people, trying to help.
Yes, I do. Outside of the work that I currently do, I do professional coaching, life coaching. Yes, emotional and mental health coaching, yes. And I say coaching instead of counseling. I can do counseling, but coaching just sounds better. Because we all need a life coach at some point. But it's really, again, getting to the root causes of what's happening and providing individuals with evidence-based solutions and strategies. Not just something where I would just make up out of my head, you should do this, you should do that. Right. Because it's very important that we really back what we're doing with science as practitioners. So for me, I'm a trauma practitioner. So just trauma, how trauma impacts our brain, trauma impacts our body, how trauma impacts generations yet unborn to come. It's very important that we are aware of the impact of trauma in our lives. Yes. Okay, so what's the next big thing for you for the next 5 years? I don't know about the next big thing. Okay. I was having a conversation with someone today, and I said, I'm nearing retirement age. I'm not, so I'm actually planning retirement. Okay. So, but I am doing some professional development in a program at Harvard University. And that's going very well. I in another program. But you got more bouquet. This whole thing. Are you serious? Program in South Africa by my sorority, Delta Sigma Theta, and it's a fellowship for Black women that are doing work within Black communities. And it's really about empowering myself more to empower others. Because Ellen, I can be on this earth for another 40, 50 years. But if I don't teach the next generation to do what I do, then what use is the gift that God has given me? Right. And so I'm not one of those people that say, hey, I know they tell them, well, I know they tell them. I'm open to teaching people to do what I do, because that's the only way, as a society, we're going to progress as it pertains to our mental health and having these discussions. So. All right. Cool. So, I mean, before we go, we're almost at the end of the show. What will be your advice to Sierra Leoneans, to parents, kids, you and I, just everyone in Sierra Leone, as far as, you know, mental health and out there, you should be able to manage it and speaking up? What would you advise them? I would say my advice is really to have these conversations. Talk. Have the conversations, but then also be comfortable enough to seek treatment when it's needed. Don't wait until someone is in active psychosis to go take them to the hospital. If you notice, if it's your child, if it's your friend, your husband, your wife, your partner, and you notice that their behavior patterns are a bit off, because we all have behavior patterns. Right. Their behavior patterns and all. Just really, are you okay? Do you need to speak to someone? And that's really the first step in addressing this. Having these conversations. All right. Thank you so much for coming here. I appreciate it. It's a privilege, you know, having the presidential advisor here with me. But of course, you know, I have a little gift for you. From me to you with love. Thank you. I appreciate it. I wish you all the best, and you know, we're all gonna come on board to help to see how we can talk to people. I'm not a professional, however, it's good for you to speak up. Like she was saying, have these conversations. You know, ask somebody else, are you okay? Check on that strong friend. If you haven't heard from somebody in a while, talk to them. If you haven't seen them, ask. You know, no for just show some concern, because a lot of times people just want to be checked on. You know, so just check on each other. I don't want to go, but I've got to go. I've been your host today, Ellen Keister. Till next week.